Hey everyone, welcome to Jay's Quick Thoughts. So today I wanted to go over basically the state of Disney's live action remakes at this point. It's been a few weeks since Snow White came out, and Snow White ended up underperforming a lot, which I don't think anyone was surprised by, except maybe Disney, unfortunately. It does seem like attitude towards the Disney live action remakes has soured recently, although I do think Lilo and Stitch looks decent. And it does seem like the general consensus for that movie is more or less riding high. So there's that. But I do think, like I've said before, I think that these movies just weren't really handled very well. Like they pumped out too many too quickly, and it came off like it's very corporate and very soulless. And I think that came to a head with Snow White. So now we're left with the question of, is this really worth going on the way they've been? So that's what we're going to take a look at. And I do think it's an interesting conversation to have, especially now that it seems like these movies are not going to be surefire hit anymore. So maybe Disney will either pump the brakes or at least slow down after Lilo and Stitch. But we'll have to see. But starting off, it says Snow White's box office underperformance has called Disney's methods for producing live-action remakes into question. Walt Disney Animation Studios is one of the most renowned companies in family entertainment, having kicked off a run of iconic features with 1937's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was the first feature-length animated movie produced in the United States. Since then, they have contributed a number of iconic animated features to cinema canon, particularly in their golden age, which includes 1941's Pinocchio and 42's Dumbo, and the Disney Renaissance, which includes 1989's The Little Mermaid and 1991's Beauty and the Beast. Yeah, Disney has had a long history of, they just celebrated their 100-year anniversary in 2023 of quality animated features, and that's been their bread and butter for all that time. But they did really feel off their game with Wish, which was supposed to be their 100-year anniversary celebration, only for it to fall flat, and that was so disappointing. And it does feel like Disney has fallen into the traps of just being too corporate and being too focused on just the wrong things, in my opinion. Like, they're relying too heavily on the live action remakes, and with Wish they were just throwing in a bunch of references without really considering the big picture, I guess. So their main heroine was just really safe, kind of underwhelming as a character, and falling into the same, what they're calling adorkable, and the really cute animal sidekick with the goat, and also the marketable star. The music was also really underwhelming. And it's just really disappointing to see Disney fall this far, given their long legacy. And now I think they're at a crossroads again, where they need to figure out first and foremost how to best move forward, because they are in a tough spot right now. So we'll have to see how Lilo and Stitch plays out, but hopefully they'll take the right lessons from Snow White and also Wish, because you can't really have a do-over for your 100-year anniversary. But anyway, let's get back to the article. Recently, Walt Disney Studios, of which Walt Disney Animation Studio is a division, has produced an increasing number of live-action remakes. This trend began to reach full force in the wake of Tim Burton's 2010 remake of 1951's Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, and I remember when that was in theaters. It was really popular, and my friends and I went to see it multiple times. And for a long time, they were pumping out billion-dollar movies with this, and I think they just kind of they let it go to their head too much. But anyway, a star-studded affair that netted more than $1 billion at the box office. Since then, Disney has produced multiple billion-dollar live-action remakes, including 2017's Beauty and the Beast and 2019's Aladdin and the Lion King. So yeah, like I was saying, they just started relying too heavily on these live-action remakes. However, 2025 Snow White, which was directed by Mark Webb and stars Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, has fallen far short of their lofty box office totals. So I think that they were just expecting this to be another billion-dollar affair, even though The Little Mermaid, I believe, made $500K. And also, there was a lot of writing on the wall with Snow White. It just was not coming together well, and I think think they were kind of just pushing ahead regardless of the red flags, and that came back to bite them. So now they're asking, how much did Snow White cost and how much did it make back? It is one of Disney's most expensive remakes, and that probably wasn't the best idea, but I think that they're just kind of relying too heavily on nostalgia and the big budget spectacle, and it just didn't work out for them. One of the biggest issues with the box office performance of Disney's latest remake is its sizable price tag. Reportedly, the Snow White budget, which ballooned amid reshoots, reached a total of roughly $250 million, though some reported have it even higher at around $270 million. Because movies typically need to earn back 2.5 times their budgets in order to turn a profit in theaters, this most likely places the remake's break-even point somewhere around $625 million. Not only has it not hit that total, it has not even earned back the same amount that it cost. So yeah, they were probably just expecting it to be $1 billion, even though I think it's been a while since they had one reach that high. I'll have to look into that, but oh yeah, so they're gonna go into that anyway, so we'll put a pin in that for now. Ahead of its ongoing 5th weekend in global theaters, the 2025 movie had only hit a global box office of $183.4 million, so that's a huge problem for them. Split between the $83.1 million domestic gross and the $100 million from the international markets. Part of this may be due to the ample Snow White backlash, which stems from a variety of controversies surrounding the movie's depiction of the original story's 7 dwarves, Godot and Zegler's opposing opinions on Israel and Palestine, and much more. It could also be related to the movie's negative critical reception, as it currently holds a 39% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, there was just a lot going against this movie, and I feel like Disney was just too stubborn to see that. That's an unfortunate business decision on their part. We'll see if they'll be able to bounce back from this or recover from it, because it'd be great to see another Disney Renaissance. We could definitely use one. Instead, we're left with Snow White. At the time of writing, Snow White is one of just 2 of Disney's direct live-action remakes to not have made its budget back in theaters. The other installment not to hit the mark was 2020's Mulan. Well, that came out on Disney Plus, right? And it was like behind a $20 paywall. So I don't think that one was in theaters, at least if I remember correctly. But anyway, which cost $200 million and only made $69.9 million during its theatrical run. However, that movie's release was heavily compromised as it premiered during a time when there was widespread theatrical shutdowns amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so maybe that's why it wasn't in theaters. In fact, it didn't ever have a major release in the United States, where it debuted at a premium VOD price point on the streaming service Disney Plus. Yeah, that's what I was saying. So I guess it would have been in theaters had it not been for the pandemic, which makes sense. But yeah, I wasn't aware that was the reason it wasn't in theaters. So then they have a breakdown of all the live action remakes and their budget and what they made at the box office. But yeah, Snow White has the worst margin aside from Mulan. So the worst margin that to hit theaters, which is really something. I don't know, there was so much writing on the wall that Disney just really dropped the ball with. But here we are. In addition to every movie but Snow White and Mulan making back their budgets in theaters, the vast majority of Disney's previous live-action remakes also hit their estimated break-even points. The only other remakes that likely did not turn a profit in theaters were 2019's Dumbo, which fell far short of its estimated $425 million break-even point, with a worldwide gross of $353.3 million, and Rob Marshall's 2023 The Little Mermaid, which fell slightly below the estimated $600.5 million break-even point by earning $569.6 million. Considering its narrow margin, Mermaid may have made up for that discrepancy with VOD earnings. Yeah, I don't think they post those earnings, which would be interesting to compare, but you know, it is what it is. Some of Disney's live-action remakes didn't make any money at the box office. Disney has produced several streaming exclusives. On top of the 4 Disney movies that likely did not break even in theaters, there are a number of other live-action remakes that did not premiere in theaters in the first place. All these titles debuted as streaming exclusives on Disney+. Their complete roster of Disney Plus exclusives include 2019's Lady and the Tramp, which starred Tessa Thompson and Justin Theroux, 2022's Pinocchio, which was directed by Back to the Future's Robert Zemeckis, and 2023's Peter Pan and Wendy, which was helmed by David Lowery, who had previously directed 2016's remake of Pete's Dragon for Disney. But it does seem like the finances have been skewing downward for the last few. All 3 of these recent one-to-one remakes have fallen short of expectations, which is really bad for Disney. So we'll have to see how Lilo and Stitch goes, but back on track. Because the finances of streaming services are more opaque than theaters, there is little data suggesting how much subscriber revenue any of those 3 Disney Plus remakes earned for Walt Disney Studios. However, it seems relatively unlikely that their streaming performance could have made up for their substantial budgets. While the budget of Peter Pan and Wendy has not yet been reported, Lady and the Tramp cost $60 million, while Pinocchio cost $150 million. Even without having to earn back more than double of their budgets due to not playing in theaters, this combined total provides the movies with a daunting challenge. Is Disney's live-action gamble really worth it? Even billion-dollar hits might not justify remaking more movies. Which, personally, I wouldn't be against. I would rather they focus more on original content than the live-action remakes. I think a lot of people are feeling that way too. So yeah, I think a lot's riding on Lilo and Stitch. Although Snow White has not met the mark in theaters, quite a few Disney live-action remakes have become major successes. This could happen again, as their roster in the coming years includes the upcoming Lilo and Stitch, which brings one of their most merchandised characters to live action for the first time. That's another thing. I think they are banking on the merchandising of Stitch, who is very popular nationwide and abroad, so he's very marketable. So I wouldn't be surprised if Stitch does well for them. And also Moana, considering how successful Moana 2 was. And now they're coming out with that live action as well. 2026 is Moana, which follows the smash hit Moana 2 into theaters by just 2 years. However, given the huge cost of many live action remakes, the question remains as to whether Disney is making enough money on the subgenre as a whole. And I think that's a very fair question. I mean, they could probably spend a little less on them. They could probably space them out more. I think they have options, but barreling forward doesn't look like it's panning out for them right now. The combined budgets of the theatrical remakes is a staggering $2.092 billion. So they have made, a major return on investment compared to the $8 billion that they've made back. But obviously that's not including like the marketing budget, which they do go on to address. Although this leaves that slate with an estimated combined break-even point of $5.23 billion. Because their box office totals reach roughly $8 billion altogether, that collectively gives them a multi-billion-dollar profit. However, the added pressures of the Disney Plus titles could shrink that margin considerably, especially if any future remakes perform at the level of Snow White, which could potentially indicate that the best move for Disney may be to slow down while they're ahead, or at least severely reduce their budget and thus there eliminate some risks, which is what I was saying. Yeah, I think this was a hard pill for them to swallow, but probably a necessary wake-up call. Given Lilo and Stitch and Moana are coming out very soon, I wouldn't be surprised if they're not going to slow down with these remakes, but I do think they need to be a lot more strategic and maybe use more wisdom when it comes to these budgets. Also, maybe read the room, you know what I mean? Like, Snow White did not have to happen the way it did. They made a lot of decisions in that movie that just did not pan out well, and it wasn't necessary. But that's where we're at right now, and I really hope Disney can course correct. But that's my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you have some hope for Lilo and Stitch and Moana remakes? Or do you think that, this is going to be more of the same? And do you think Disney can still turn this around? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to our members. Tyrant Carnivore, Shiny Orc Boy, Depth Charge Media, Samaru 163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JVR, Equestron, Norman Sweet Cream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Hunter Rose, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Felix Bam, Lucas Geist, J Draws, Meowsers, Sky, Philip, Isaac Martinez, Garcia XV Legend, Tobias Weller, Bandito Bane, Mac B909, Dakari the Professor, Todd McCaffrey, Omni Fair, General Bolivar, Cavalcoj, Strider Exile, Phil C, Killer Bomb, Slawa Saporiguez, Entwined Boot 301, Griffin of Might, Frankie Camarillo, Datadyne Executive, Crimson Phantom, Jin the Goblin, Papa Hud 69, The Gengar King, and Daunter. Thank you for the support, and if you want to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and that part's free. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.